Okay, so welcome back to the podcast. I'm looking forward to this one today because I have Debbie Weiss with me. She's a best-selling author, a Canfield Certified Trainer in the Success Principles, a podcast host and speaker, and she helps inspire women to see that they can achieve their dreams and live their best lives no matter what their circumstances. Debbie is passionate about helping others unlock their potential and create a fulfilling and joyful life. And I want to add that Debbie is a true inspiration, especially to those of us in midlife. And I feel very fortunate to have her on the podcast today. So, with that, I want to welcome you, Debbie. Thanks for being here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me and for that very nice introduction. I really appreciate that.
Oh, okay. Well, this is such a pleasure for me to have you here. I've had a chance to look through most of your newest books, so that's very exciting, and I'm sure we're going to talk a little bit about that here. But to begin with, just so we all know who you are and your journey, can you tell us specifically about your caregiver journey? Because I know that's a big part of why you're here, and when you realized that you had lost yourself in that time.
Absolutely. So yes, I have been a family caregiver to three different family members over the last 40 plus years. It started when I was 17, and my dad, who had just turned 46, had a massive stroke and survived. And soon afterwards, my parents actually divorced. And so my father became my responsibility for the next 30 years. And, I wasn't even truly an adult myself at the time that I took on this responsibility. And I don't believe that, my mother really realized with the divorce that now this was going to kind of fall into my lap. But I was daddy's little girl and I was happy to step up and do whatever I could for him. And he never lived with me, but I was his person. I had to learn about everything. In my 20s, I'm learning about Medicaid and Medicare and the difference between institutional Medicaid, things that people in midlife start to learn, right? Because that's when you normally care for your parents. And I watched my friends live these carefree lives in their 20s, where in the back of my mind, I was always like, well, what about my father who's going to be with, that he was always there. So then when I had my oldest son at 2, he was diagnosed on the autism spectrum. And that just takes motherhood in a completely different direction. Lots of challenges there. So that was my next journey. And then unfortunately, my husband became permanently disabled due to both physical and mental illness, probably for about the last 5 years of his life, but it was 10 or 15 years that I could see that he was on the downslide, so to speak. And just after he got out of a hospitalization specifically for depression and anxiety, and he came out and he was in this wonderful place, 6 weeks later, he was diagnosed with terminal blood cancer, unrelated to his other illnesses. And at that point, I stopped working basically and took care of him for the next 6 months. And it was grueling because his depression and anxiety came back. And honestly, the mental illness was harder than the physical.
Oh, I can only imagine.
Yeah. So
That is
that's my
huge.
caregiving journey.
Yes.
Um, my husband did pass away on December 30th, 2022. And my dad died back in 2011. So now my oldest son and I live together, and I have a younger son who's a senior in college. Going back to when I kind of had that realization was when I turned 50. When I turned 50, something about the number 50 to me was significant. And my friends, when I turned 50, insisted that we go away for the weekend to celebrate. And I really fought them because I thought, how am I leaving everybody? How's my husband going to survive and the boys? And they talked me into it. And I have to say, it was really the best decision of my life, because on that trip, through discussions, I realized I had lost myself. I had no idea who I was. The things about me that people used to know me for my laugh. And I had to ask them, did people know me for my laugh? Like I couldn't even remember. And I realized I lost my laugh. I lost who I was. I didn't know specifically. It wasn't like I had some deep desire that I always wanted to be I don't know, an artist, a singer. Like I didn't know what I was missing, what I was searching for. And I wouldn't say I was regretful of taking care of my family members because I'm not and I wasn't. I think it was more I took care of them at the expense of losing myself. And that's what I didn't have to do. And because I allowed that to happen, I did have so much anger and resentment towards my family members. And, what kind of caregiver is that? I was like so high strung that at the drop of a hat, I would just kind of explode because I was, had so much stress. And so it was really at 50 that I said, I don't want to get to the end of my life and look back and have regrets for the things I, hadn't done, shoulda, coulda, woulda. And I didn't know, again, I didn't know what those things were. I just knew that if I didn't change, then nothing would change. And I also, for me at that time, my biggest realization was that I'm the one who controls my life, regardless of the fact that I was a caregiver and all of these things. I was taking my power and putting it on the people, my family members, the circumstances, whatever it was, not me. And when I realized, no, it is me and it's up to me and it's my life and it's my decisions, how I react to the things that happen. It was empowering, but it can also be shameful almost because you look back and say, oh, look at this, I wasted. But, I chose not to do that. Now, once you realize that you have the power, now it gets exciting. And now what? And I've been on that journey over the past decade.
The and now what journey. I like that. And now what? Because I think you just keep on sort of discovering yourself as you go along. Because through this time, like you said, on your 50th birthday, you went away for the weekend and you discovered that you didn't know who you are. You didn't know that you were known for your laugh, which I think is so wow, that you just figured that these people knew me when I could laugh, and now I don't even remember that person. And now you went from there to understanding that you've put yourself in this situation. I like that you have taken responsibility and then you were able to say, but I control my life and I don't have to feel the resentment and the anger and put all this stress. It's all you. It's all yourself that did that to yourself. And I think that a lot of women find themselves in a caregiver position and feeling those feelings as well, right? That they didn't have a choice, that they had to do this, that they feel like a victim in their life. And so when you had this realization at 50, what did you do from there? How did you get yourself out of that feeling and into this whole other life?
Well, first, let me say, it didn't all come at one time, right? So I didn't have this grand plan. But what I had decided to do was start somewhere. And the other lifelong struggle that I've had has been with my weight from literally the time that I was born. It wasn't an adult thing. It was from the time I was a child. And over the 50 years, I gained and lost, probably 5,000 pounds, right? And tried every diet and all the things. And at this point, I was about 100 pounds overweight. And I said, this is where I need to start. I've got to be healthy, for my kids, for myself, right? And again, something about the 50 changes now it's not about how I look. It still is a little bit, but it's not the driving force anymore. Now it's, I want to live a long life, to be there for my kids, to be there for my grandchildren, to be able to be active, right? And all the things. And so what I decided is that I'm going to go back to Weight Watchers, because for me, that has been the most successful diet and that I've been on over the years, because I went to Weight Watchers when I was 10. So, but this time, instead of doing what I've done in the past, which is going on a diet and saying, okay, this is good, I'm bad, I'm on, I'm off. I have to lose 25 pounds in 3 months, otherwise I'm a failure. I took all of that away. And instead, I said, I'm going to go and attend a meeting every week. That's it. That's my only goal. I don't care about what I'm eating. I don't care about what I'm exercising, I don't care what the scale says. And that's what I did for about 2 months, until it was routine. And I actually started to look forward to it once I got to know some of the people. And then I added another piece. And that's what I did. I just slowly set small goals and realized my mindset changed, in that this is not something I'm ever going to be done with. And I think that that really is what made it click. So if that's the case, it doesn't mean that I can never eat pizza and ice cream again. I just have to change the way that I view it. And that's really where the whole thing started. It took me about 3 years to lose 90 pounds. That was about 7 years ago. I have lost a little more. I've gained 10 to 15 pounds back, but caught it, which is something I've never been able to do before. And I realized that Weight Watchers didn't change. The thing that changed was my approach and my mindset. And so that was kind of like a jumping off point when I had that realization of, all of a sudden now I'm not looking at it as a diet. I'm not looking at good and bad and when is this going to be over? And I failed and all the things. And because of that, and the time limit too, that really eased it, right? Because then, yeah, I had weeks where, oh, okay, I was celebrating something and the scale went up a few pounds. That's okay. That's
Wow.
okay. And it's just that even just talking about it, it sounds so simple, right? Oh, I just had to change the way I was looking at it. It's a lot harder to do, especially when you've, had that lifetime of looking at it in one perspective,
Yes.
but you can do it.
I I love that you did it that way. It's the way I coach my clients too, is doing the small things over a period of time. It's not overnight. But how did you even know to start that way, given that you had done this all your life and it was always the same process, and all of a sudden you changed the way you thought about it? Was it a book? Was it something happened in your, like, other than, I know that your story, but what triggered that new thinking?
I honestly don't remember. I just remember thinking, you tried it one way all this time. And how's that working for you, right?
Yeah.
Not so good. And I
Mm,
also remember, I, of course, wanted to lose weight. I always wanted to lose weight, but I wasn't psyched up for it. Sometimes
mhm.
you're like, okay, I'm going to do this. No, I wasn't there, but I knew that that's what I wanted. And so I think I said that I took the pressure off myself. So just go. So
Yeah,
you don't lose weight, but just do this one thing. Just
that's it.
go. And maybe, and really this is what happened. Maybe over time, you'll start to gain that momentum and that feeling of, I can do this and I want to do this. So
Yeah. Wow. And that just changed everything, just
it
that
did.
shift in mindset. And I guess because now I've been reading your new book, which is called The Sprinkle Effect. And it's interesting because so many of these things, the principles, one of which is mindset, that now you sort of live by. It sounds like you've completely gone in this direction and it's changed your life.
It has. I think after I lost the weight, or maybe it was during that time, I started to listen to podcasts. I had never listened to podcasts before. And I have a friend who was an active listener. And I said, well, who are these people you're listening to? Who are they? Are they celebrities? Are they, you know? And she said, no. And she, I didn't even know where to go. She
Yeah.
told me where to go and how to find it. And, after trial and error, I wound up listening to a podcast of a woman who had lost like over 150 pounds and also paid off a good amount of debt, because that was something that I was also struggling with at the time. And I thought, well, she's me, right? She was where I was. And so she's done it. So I want to learn from her. And after listening, she was actually launching a course. And I remember clicking on the link and being like having sticker shock. I can't remember exactly how much it was. It was $1,000 or $1,200, somewhere like that. And I was like, oh my goodness, I'm going to pay this much. I'm already in debt. Now I'm going to pay, let's say, $1,000 more for what? But something kept drawing me to it. And I eventually did click the button. And I remember the first few weeks, I had such a negative attitude because I was convinced that somehow it was a scam.
Hmm.
And when it did start, I thought, you know, um, I want the answer. I'm taking this course week after week. When is she going to give me the answer to how I pay off the debt and how I lose the weight? And it frustrated me. And she gave us all these tools and journal thing that I was so uncomfortable with. And over time, I realized you can't give someone the answer, right? She was just really introducing us to the power of mindset and to all these ideas, many of the ideas that I actually talk about in the Sprinkle Effect book. But, she was the first one who said, what does your dream life look like in detail?
Mm.
And I thought, I don't know. I never gave it time to think about that. Maybe I always thought, okay, I was thin and I had money, right?
Yep.
What would I be doing every minute? And it was those types of exercises that really started to change. And no, she never gave me the answer. But, I feel like it's like the Wizard of Oz. You have to find it for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's exactly what it is. And that's exactly what you did. So it just sounds like it's a lot of awareness. It was a lot of really understanding what you wanted. Because, like you said, it was just easy to say, yeah, I just want to be thin and rich. But, which most people will say, but when you really think about it, what does that mean to you? And there's so much behind it that we often don't go there. And so you went on this journey to discovering yourself essentially.
Yeah, I mean, I really just started to be more open. Um, you know, I I'll get to it, but I wrote a memoir and it's called On Second Thought, Maybe I Can. And the reason it's called that is because my whole life, anything that was presented to me, something simple, like it didn't have to be complicated and a big thing. My first reaction was always, I can't do that. I
Mm.
always had a reason why I couldn't do that. I'm not creative enough. I'm not coordinated. I don't have enough money to do that. There's always an excuse. And what I discovered was if I let that happen, but then kind of like take a breath and wait a minute, on second thought, why can't I? Maybe I can do that. And that's where I discovered that really that's where the growth happens, because I've always been a scaredy cat of everything, like, everything. And so really that's what it was that's limiting me. Is it's so much easier to stay in our comfort zone, right?
Yes.
But that's why I wasn't growing, because I wasn't open to learning anything new, to trying something new, to putting myself out there. And so when I became curious, wanted to learn, and became open to some of these things that I had an opinion of that wasn't for me, that was stupid, whatever dumb things I was thinking. When I let go of that, that's kind of where the magic started to happen.
Wow. It's so powerful. It's just, it's such a, it's like you said, it sounds simple, but it was a process. It didn't happen overnight to getting there. So, so where did you even get the idea of writing your memoir? That's what I want to know. And where did you all of a sudden find time to do this as well? Because that's a time-consuming process, and you'd never written a book before. So that
No,
is amazing. And I know a lot of women who do want to write a book. So I think this is an inspiring story.
I have to say, I forget I've Googled it before. I forget, maybe it's like 80 or 83% of people want to write a book. I was not in that 83%.
No.
No interest
Okay.
in writing a book ever in my life. No. As a matter of fact, I'm just like, I call myself a numbers girl. I actually graduated. I was a CPA for the first 10 years of my life, and I've been an insurance agent for the last 30. So nothing to do with writing, all
Mm.
numbers. And what happened was, when I realized that I wanted to share this message with other people, because I was in my 50s, I consider myself fairly intelligent. And it took me that long to realize, oh, it's me. I have the power. Once I realized that, then everything changed, as we've been saying. But I wanted to tell other people that. Maybe they're people
Mm.
like me who had no idea, who never thought of it. And so, how am I going to reach people? And of course, podcasts, but the idea of a book kept coming up. And I kept saying to myself, it's a great idea, but really, and a lot of my limiting beliefs, who would want to read
Mhm.
my book? Who would want to read the stories of my life, right? No, I'm not a celebrity. Celebrities write memoirs and biographies, and that's who you want to know about. What do I have to say? And that there was that, and the fact that, well, if I'm going to write a book, I'm going to have to hire a ghostwriter, because can't be the one who physically writes, because I have no freaking idea what I'm doing. And again, it was a podcast. I was listening to a podcast that I don't listen to all the time. And there was a guest who was a woman who helped first-time authors get their stories out there. And,
Wow.
I really had started believing in signs. Come on. I hardly listen to this podcast. Here's this woman, just who I need. I related to her. I liked her from hearing her. And so I contacted her after the podcast, and we met online, and I, really loved her instantly. And I thought to myself, well, if I'm going to do this, I I need help. I don't know what I'm doing. And she was launching a 12-week course, and for first-time authors, to get
Mhm.
write your first draft. And so I was, on the fence about it. And at the same time, my husband got the diagnosis. And so I said, well, now obviously I can't join this course. And at the time, I was seeing a therapist, and the course was like still kind of nudging at me. I knew I really wanted to give it a try. And I said to her, I'm embarrassed that I'm even asking you this at a time like this, because it feels so selfish that here I am talking about taking this, dumb course, when my husband just got this diagnosis. And she said to me, I don't agree with you. I think this is exactly what you need, because you're going to need something separate from what's going to go on in your life, that you can focus on to take your mind off everything else. And I said, well, what happens if, we meet weekly and there's a homework assignment and I don't do the homework, or I can't show up because, something's going on in my life? And she said, "Who cares?" And I thought, oh, wow, I guess you're right, you know? And so I joined the course, and I actually did write the book in that time period when my husband was dying. When he passed away, I had 3 chapters. I was 3 chapters shy of finishing.
Wow, that is amazing.
I
And
mean,
how do you feel about that now that you look back at that time? I imagine you're happy you did that. And
oh,
did it help you through the process
it
of
so
your
helped me through the
husband? And
process.
yeah,
She was 1,000% right.
yes.
And really, it's amazing how learning something new, because that's what I was doing, right? I had no idea what
Mhm.
the heck I was doing. Learning something new was actually a form of self-care.
Yeah, it's so
And
good.
you wouldn't, I didn't think that, it wasn't obvious that this was truly a form of self-care, but it was. And once I got started, it was a lot of stumbles and starts and stops in the beginning. But once I kind of figured out what I was doing and the direction, I was just, I I made sure that every day I was going to write. And the only way that that would happen is to schedule it. So I would either be writing at 6 o'clock in the morning before my husband woke up. If he was in the hospital, I packed my computer and everything, and I went to the hospital and I set it up in the hospital, and I did it when he was sleeping or went for a test or whatever it was.
Mm.
If he was home and, everything was fairly calm, I would say, it's 2 o'clock and I'm going upstairs for an hour, and don't bother me unless it's an emergency. If
Wow.
I didn't do those things, it would not have happened, because it would have been so easy under the circumstances to say, I don't have any time. Look at everything that's going on.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. It's like the book got you through it.
It did.
It's like you needed each other, the book and you. It was
It
amazing.
it really was, so when I was 3 chapters shy, that was December 30th. The book was due to the editor on January 14th. And of course, they said to me, don't be ridiculous. We'll change the deadline. And I said, you know what? Let's just see. And after everybody, my friends and family went back to their regular lives, when you lose someone, especially somebody who's, your partner, somebody who's in your life daily,
Yes.
that's the hardest part.
Mm.
Right? Because everyone else goes back to their regular lives. They go back to their families. They go back to their spouses. And you're left sitting, kind of like in this empty house by yourself. And I decided that finishing the book during that time is exactly what I needed to do, because it was just like when he was dying. It gave me something else to focus on and helped during that intense grief period.
Wow. That's so inspiring. I think we have to understand that. And I love that you see it as self-care and that you were able to recognize that this is a way I'm taking care of myself, and that you knew you needed to be taken care of too in this time where you were there for your husband, but you also needed something, and that you did that is amazing.
Well, thank you. What's really amazing about the whole thing is that I discovered I liked it.
Yeah.
You know, I was amazed that I could actually do it and that people liked it. And now I have, like, it's almost like I unearthed a part of me I absolutely never knew existed, and I never would have if I hadn't been open and been on this journey and, kind of listened to the whispers and said, why not? On second thought, maybe I can do this. And
Yes.
that idea has really changed my life.
Yeah, I like the idea that you're listening to the whispers. It's like your intuition. There's this voice inside, and I think we all have it, and that we try to, push down, and we don't listen to it, and we just, whatever. It doesn't make any sense. But you actually, it's at, this point in your life, decided to listen, and there's a few points in your story so far where you actually listening to the voice has brought you to where you are. Has That's, it was always there inside you. Something was nudging you, and you decided to follow it. And I think so often we decide not to listen, and that it just seems silly or frivolous or unimportant. But it's so important. It got you here and to a healthier, happier place than you were before.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And even recently, I can think of times where I actually, in business, agreed to do something where I had a gut feeling it wasn't right. The person wasn't the right person. There was something that I felt in my gut, but I wanted to think that it was true or real. And I ignored the gut,
Mm-hmm.
and my gut proved to be right. And it was just a reminder. It's a reminder. Your gut knows what it's talking about. Listen, because sometimes, you know, in my mind, I wanted it to work so badly that I was thinking to myself, oh, stop that, those are just silly feelings.
Yeah.
And they weren't. So it's still a journey, right? I mean, it's
Yeah.
still, yeah. Sometimes your gut's giving you an answer. You don't want that answer. You want the other answer. And that's
No,
what's hard.
absolutely. Yeah, because that answer is usually not the convenient answer. So it's the answer that's going to require some work from you and some courage from you. And but like you said, for good or for, it can take you out of danger, and it can bring you into this whole new discovery of yourself. So I just think it's so important. I was just speaking to another podcast guest recently who is an intuitive, and how important it is to listen to this inner voice. And it's just made me more aware of it. And you mentioned it so many times here that I just see that as an important thing, that we cannot ignore this voice inside of us, or we should not ignore it.
Yeah. If I look back to my journey thus far, those steps, certain steps that I took that were scary, but I just knew that's where I had to go.
Hmm.
That's, looking back, that's what led me to where I am today. And, the journey doesn't stop. I know there's
No,
steps I'm, taking now.
no. Well, that's it. I mean, I want you to talk a little bit about your book that's coming up. It's going to be released in November, I believe, right?
Yes, yes, November 11th.
November
So
11th.
November
Okay.
11th, 11/11.
Okay.
So when
Good.
I had to decide on my memoir, and these are things I didn't know, is it going to be a memoir? Is it going to be a self-help book? What is the difference? Do I want to, in my memoir, tell my story, but then also offer advice? And I made the decision, I'm just going to tell my story. There's no advice, there's no key takeaways at the end, there's nothing like that. It's just an inspiring story of, overcoming your limiting beliefs and changing your life. So it's divided into three parts. Like when I was a kid, a lot of the struggles I went through, I don't want to say in the middle because it's not like my life's over, but in
Mm-hmm.
midlife, let's say, and then what has happened since I'm 50. But again, nothing, no advice. And so I now, from feedback, and I knew at the time that this was going to be my follow-up. What did I do? Right? What did I do in the last decade? And so now this book is called The Sprinkle Effect because I like things that make me smile. I like pink and hearts
Mm-hmm.
and rainbow sprinkles. And so the
Yes.
idea is there's about 15 or 16 different sprinkles that you can sprinkle into your life to start to make these changes. And like Debbie said, sprinkle of mindset, perspective, discipline, action, resilience, joy, curiosity, connection, a whole bunch of different things. And so each chapter, I tell a little relatable story to that particular sprinkle, and then, give you ideas of how to think about that sprinkle, how you can incorporate it into your life. And then at the end of every chapter, there are exercises and journal prompts. And I wrote in the introduction, because I feel so strongly about this, that it's just like that course I took. She wasn't going to give me the answer. If I didn't do her homework, which is really taking a look inside myself, nothing was going to change. And so I say in the beginning strongly and over, you can't just read a book and like magic, it's going to change. You have to do the work. And so that's what this is. Yeah, my little stories are all sweet and whatever, and maybe inspiring, and that's nice. But if you don't do the work, it's just going to be another book that you put on the shelf and forget about it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what's so good about this book, actually, is because you're very specific too with the actions to take. You give very specific things we can do, and then a journal prompt that we can use. And so I really like how you've organized the book. I think, yes, and it doesn't have to be done in order either. I think you can start with the sprinkle that you most resonates with you, that you are most attracted to, and just go to that sprinkle and read about it, and then do the exercises that she's put there, which are so good for helping you really dive into who you are. And no, I really like the way you've organized the book, Debbie. I think it was very fun. I do love your stories. I think they're very relatable. I think it really helps to understand who you are. I'm sure that a good part of your memoir is in this book, maybe too, because they're such good stories, and they gave you all of these different perspectives, beliefs, mindset. All of these things are in there, and it's just it's well done. So I would recommend it to anybody in the audience if you are looking for, to discover yourself a little bit, or if there's something you need to get out of you, like Debbie did. These are really, it's a really helpful book to get you moving forward, I think.
Well, I appreciate that. So I also am simultaneously publishing a workbook to go with it,
Oh,
because
good.
uh, what I find, and there's, the difference just is it's one place that has all the activities. It has a few more journal prompts for each sprinkle. But I know for myself, and I was thinking of this morning, like, I wrote this, where did I write this? Because I've got notebooks all over the place, right? And so I love the idea, for me personally, is do everything in this one book. You know where it is. You can always go back to it, right? And so I felt very, very passionate about having that option. You don't need it, but if you're someone who, it just, for me, it's like something about having that book. If I leave it blank, I would feel guilty. It kind of like makes me do it,
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. You want to fill it in. That's exactly it. No, that's really good. And yeah, so November 11th, 11/11 is when the book comes out. So I think that it's so good. And I don't know if anybody's watching on video, but if you can see the video, which it is on YouTube, or it will be on YouTube. Um, just Debbie is so colorful. The color pink is very prominent. But I just love, obviously, these sprinkles are very much a part of who she is. I mean, all of the colors, you embrace them all.
Thank you. Yeah, I am definitely, I'm a pink person, but I'm a colorful person. If you had my house, I had to tone it down, but I have like a blue room, a red room, a pink, I had a pink room with hot pink carpet. We used to call it, we think it's the White House. That's what we called the bedrooms upstairs. Oh, go in the red room, go in the pink room.
I love it. I think it's part of who you are, and
It is.
it comes through. So I love that.
Thank you.
So I know we're winding up here, but before you go, there's a question I ask all my guests, which is, what has been the best part of getting older for you?
Oh gosh.
Mhm.
Um, this wisdom, you know, this awareness. And now it's funny because I think to myself, how can I teach this to younger people, right? To embrace this part of themselves and go on this journey so much earlier.
Mhm.
And how do you pass on all this life experience now that we have as middle-aged people, right? All the wisdom that we've gained. It's hard, you know, they have to kind of live some of this stuff for themselves to get those lessons. But I think that that's the best part, is that now we're at a point where we can step into who we are, because we have that experience, things that worked, things that didn't work. And now it's our time, regardless of where we are, taking care of kids, parents, our jobs, worried about retirement. I don't want to say forget all that, but yeah, forget all that. Or prioritize becoming who you were meant to be.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, your story gives us permission to do that. I think not that we need permission, we don't, but we feel like we need it. And when we see somebody like you who's done it and gone ahead and lived her life despite, I mean, you were a caregiver to the highest level. I mean, your father, your husband, your son, but yet you took care of yourself. It took you years to get there, but you did it and you've created this whole other life for yourself. And I think it's such a good example that we can look at and say, we need to do this because the world needs what you are putting into it right now, Debbie. So I thank God that you got to where you did, because or we wouldn't have your work, we wouldn't have your colorful self here with us today. So I really appreciate that you were able to get to where you are and that you can now help other people do the same.
Thank you. Yeah. Looking back, it really is hard to believe. And I just wish everybody could see who I used to be, and just know that, you know, I don't want to say I'm nothing special, but I'm not,
Mm.
I'm really not. I think I really am proof that anybody can do it. You just have to have the desire
Yeah.
and the wherewithal to stick with it, because it is easy to push yourself, and it's work. It's work. I never understood really what working on yourself meant.
Yeah.
It is work, but it is so well worth it. It'll change your life.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much for that. So now that, we're here, and I would love the women in the audience to be able to get in touch with you, to be able to buy your books. So where can they do that? Where can they find you?
The best place is my website. All the links to everything else are there. And that is DebbieRWeiss.com. So you have to put it in the R, otherwise you wind up on a realtor in California.
Okay. Okay. Does she have any books? No, probably not. So Debbie R. Weiss, and I will put that in the show notes, and I will put the links, all your links in the show notes so that people can find you, and the names of your books as well, so that they can go out and buy them. And yeah, and I'll highly recommend them. So thank you, Debbie, for being here today. I really appreciate you sharing your story with us, and I know that it's going to do a lot of good in my audience. So I really appreciate you were here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been wonderful.